I never thought my career would end at a company gala, but as I stood there in my carefully chosen black cocktail dress, watching CEO Richard Parker's face turn crimson with orchestrated rage, I realized that sometimes the end is just the beginning. My name is Alexandra Chen, and after 4 years at Global Tech Innovations, I had uncovered something that would shake the company to its core. But let me start from the beginning. I joined Global Tech fresh out of MIT, armed with a degree in financial engineering and a naive belief that merit always trumps politics. The company was everything an ambitious 24-year-old could dream of, a Fortune 500 tech giant with a gleaming headquarters in Silicon Valley and a reputation for innovation. My first 3 years were a blur of 60-hour weeks, complex financial models, and gradual promotions. I moved from junior analyst to senior financial strategist, earning a reputation for catching discrepancies that others missed. Alex has eyes like a hawk, my immediate supervisor, James Morrison, would say. If only he knew how true that would prove to be. Everything changed 6 months ago when I noticed an unusual pattern in our Asia-Pacific acquisition numbers. Small discrepancies at first, rounding errors that shouldn't exist in our automated systems, timestamps that didn't quite match across databases. Most people would have ignored these tiny inconsistencies. But I had spent 3 years building our fraud detection algorithms, and I knew that the biggest financial crimes often hide behind the smallest errors. I did what any diligent employee would do. I reported my findings to my supervisor. James listened carefully, his forehead creasing with concern. "This is serious, Alex. Let me take it to Richard directly." Richard Parker had been CEO for 5 years, lauded as the visionary who transformed Global Tech from a middle-tier player into an industry leader. He had a Harvard MBA, a winning smile, and a gift for making everyone feel like they were part of something special. I still remember his speeches at quarterly meetings, how he would pace the stage talking about integrity and innovation as our core values. A week after I reported the discrepancies, James called me into his office. The blinds were drawn, unusual for him. Richard looked into it, he said, not quite meeting my highs. "It's nothing, just some legacy system issues from the merger." "Drop it, Alex, that's an order." But I couldn't drop it. The numbers kept nagging at me, like a splinter in my mind. Late at night, after most employees had gone home, I dug deeper. What I found made my blood run cold. The discrepancies weren't random, they were systematic. Someone had created a sophisticated scheme to siphon funds from our Asia-Pacific acquisitions, hiding the transactions behind layers of legitimate-looking transfers. The amounts were cleverly calculated to stay just below standard audit thresholds. Over 3 years, the total reached $43 million. I spent weeks documenting everything, triple-checking my findings, building an airtight case. The evidence pointed to a small group of senior executives, led by none other than Richard Parker himself. They had been using the chaos of our rapid expansion to hide their tracks, counting on the fact that few people understood both the financial and technical sides well enough to spot the pattern. I should have known what would happen next. 2 days after I submitted my comprehensive report to the board's audit committee, Richard called an emergency executive meeting. I wasn't invited, but Maria from accounting texted me the highlights. Richard had discovered a massive fraud attempt by a junior employee. Me. According to him, I had been manipulating the Asia-Pacific numbers, trying to hide my own embezzlement scheme. The next week was a nightmare of hostile HR meetings and thinly veiled threats. Suddenly, my access to key systems was revoked. Longtime colleagues stopped meeting my eyes in the hallway. James, my once supportive supervisor, now walked the other way when he saw me coming. But Richard had made one crucial mistake. In his rush to discredit me, he hadn't realized that I had built backdoors into the fraud detection system, legitimate security features that logged every attempt to modify or delete transaction records. Every time they tried to cover their tracks, they only created more evidence. Which brings us back to the company gala. Richard had planned it perfectly, or so he thought. A public humiliation in front of the entire company, designed to destroy my credibility once and for all. As security approached to escort me out, I caught a glimpse of James in the crowd, looking uncomfortable but unwilling to speak up. "Miss Chen has been terminated for gross misconduct," Richard announced to the stunned crowd. "She attempted to defraud this company of millions, betraying the trust we placed in her." I could have shouted, could have made a scene. Instead, I smiled calmly and spoke just loud enough for the closest 50 people to hear. Check the real audit trail, Richard. The one that logs everything, including deletions. The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. In that moment, he realized his mistake. But it was too late. As security led me out, I sent a pre-written email to every board member and major shareholder. Subject line: Evidence of $43 million fraud scheme. Emergency board meeting required. I spent the weekend in my apartment, ignoring calls from unknown numbers and watching my encrypted backup servers light up with access attempts. They were trying desperately to find and delete any evidence, not realizing that every attempt was being logged, creating an even stronger case against them. Monday morning was approaching, and with it, the emergency board meeting that would change everything. Richard thought he had won, thought he had destroyed me. But sometimes the greatest victory comes after everyone thinks you've lost. What happened next would shake global tech to its foundations. But that's a story for another part. Monday morning dawned clear and cold in Silicon Valley. I arrived at Global Tech headquarters at 7:30 a.m., exactly 1 hour before the emergency board meeting. Security tried to stop me at the lobby, but I simply handed them the formal board summons I'd received Sunday night. The witness must be present, it read in stark black letters. I could feel eyes on me as I walked through the office. Some pitying, some curious, some afraid. The whispers followed me like shadows. There goes the fraud, the embezzler, the disgraced analyst. I kept my head high, clutching my laptop bag containing everything I needed to bring down a corrupt CEO. The boardroom was on the top floor, all glass and chrome with a view of the bay. By 8:15, the room was filling up. Board members in expensive suits, senior executives trying to hide their nervousness, Richard's personal lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. James Morrison, my former supervisor, sat in a corner, looking like he aged 10 years over the weekend. At 8:25, Richard walked in, his usual confident smile firmly in place. He barely glanced at me as he took his seat at the head of the table. Poor Richard, he still thought he was in control. Let's address this ridiculous situation quickly, Richard began, shuffling his papers importantly. Ms. Chen has made some outrageous accusations. Actually, interrupted Margaret Wu, the head of the board's audit committee. We'll begin with Ms. Chen's presentation. She nodded at me. Please proceed. I connected my laptop to the display system, feeling Richard's glare burning into me. The room fell silent as I pulled up my first slide. 3 years ago, I began my voice steady. Global Tech implemented a new fraud detection system that I helped design. What many people don't know is that this system includes an immutable audit log. Every transaction, every modification, every deletion attempt is recorded in a secure blockchain that cannot be altered. I clicked to the next slide, showing a complex web of transactions. This is the official record of our Asia-Pacific acquisitions. Another click, and this is what's really happening behind the scenes. For the next 45 minutes, I laid out everything. The fake subsidiaries created to facilitate the fraud. The cleverly disguised transfers that siphoned money into private accounts. The systematic deletion of evidence that had, ironically, only created more proof of wrongdoing. Impossible, Richard interrupted, but his face had lost its color. These records were cleared. I mean, they were checked. They were legitimate. Checked by your team, Richard? I asked quietly. The same team that's been helping you steal $43 million over the past 3 years. The room erupted in chaos. Board members were shouting questions. Richard's lawyer was frantically scribbling notes. James Morrison looked like he was about to be sick. You can't prove any of this, Richard snarled, desperation creeping into his voice. That's when I played my trump card. Actually, I said, pulling up a new window. Every time someone tried to delete evidence, the system created an encrypted backup. Would you like to see the log of deletion attempts from this weekend? It's quite interesting. Dozens of attempts, all from executive-level accounts, trying desperately to erase the trail. I turned to Margaret Wu. I've prepared copies of all documentation, including the blockchain audit logs, for the board and relevant authorities. You'll find them impossible to alter or delete. I designed them that way. Richard jumped to his feet. This is absurd. She's just a junior analyst. You can't possibly. Former MIT prodigy in financial engineering, Margaret cut in, reading from a file. Created our current fraud detection system, multiple patents in blockchain security. Tell me, Richard, did you even read her personnel file before trying to frame her? The next few hours passed in a blur. Security escorted Richard and 3 other executives from the building. The FBI arrived shortly after. Apparently, Margaret had alerted them days ago after first receiving my evidence. James Morrison resigned on the spot, though I later learned he agreed to testify against Richard in exchange for leniency. By evening, the story had hit the financial news. Global Tech stock took an initial hit, but the board's swift action in removing the corrupt elements helped stabilize things. Margaret Wu personally offered me a new position, Chief of Financial Security, reporting directly to the board. I accepted, with conditions. First, a complete overhaul of our compliance systems. Second, protection for whistleblowers. And third, a commitment to promote based on merit, not politics. 6 months later, Global Tech is stronger than ever. Our new transparency initiatives have become industry standard. Richard and his co-conspirators are awaiting trial, facing decades in prison. The $43 million has been traced and recovered. Sometimes I think about that company gala, about Richard's smug face as he tried to destroy me. He never understood that in trying to erase me, he only proved why I was dangerous to him. He thought power came from titles and connections. I knew it came from understanding the systems that run our world and building better ones. Last week, I gave a keynote speech at MIT's graduation ceremony. My topic? Integrity in the Age of Digital Finance. The students were particularly interested in my story, but I emphasized that it wasn't about revenge. It was about building systems that make it harder for people to abuse power. James Morrison sent me an email recently, an apology for not standing up sooner. I haven't replied yet. Some bridges, once broken, take time to rebuild. As for me, I'm where I always wanted to be, doing what I do best, catching people who think they're too smart to get caught. My team jokes that I have a sixth sense for fraud, but it's simpler than that. I just never forgot what my father, a small-town accountant, always told me: numbers don't lie, Alex, people do. Every morning, I walk into my new corner office, look out at the bay, and smile. Richard's old office is now a cybersecurity command center. It's a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building something better from the ruins of their mistakes. The fraud detection system that caught Richard? We've made it open source, available to any company that wants to implement better financial security. Because the best way to fight corruption isn't to hide your tools, it's to share them, making it harder for the next Richard Parker to think they can get away with it. They say success is the best revenge. I disagree. Success isn't about revenge at all. It's about creating systems so robust that people like Richard never get the chance to abuse them in the first place. As I write this from my office, watching the sun set over Silicon Valley, I think about all the other Alexandra Chens out there, young, idealistic, facing their own Richard Parkers. My advice to them: keep building, keep documenting, keep believing in the power of truth encoded in elegant systems, because sometimes the quiet ones, the ones they underestimate, are the ones who change everything. And to Richard, sitting in his cell awaiting trial, thanks for teaching me the most valuable lesson of all. Integrity, backed by unbreakable code, will always win in the end.